everyone. In this video, we will discuss three questions related to form and function. For centuries, the concept of form has been approached in various ways by many people. This topic has caused differences of opinion among various architects and philosophers. The concept of form in the field of architecture is distinguished from other disciplines due to its role in shaping the material world. This situation may indicate that the concept of form is moving away from its abstract state and becoming more concrete. For example, Plato believed that objects are just reflections of forms and that the real thing is not what we see with our senses, but the forms they have. On the other hand, Aristotle thought of matter and form together as a whole. During the Renaissance, this concept of form began to play a role in the context of sculpture and was interpreted as a reduction to form.
At the beginning of the 19th century, the concept of form was understood differently by various thinkers. For Kant, it was a faculty of perception. For Goethe, it was a genetically recognizable characteristic of an object, and for Hegel, it became a feature that exists beyond and above objects. According to Forti, form is merely a tool for thinking. It doesn't have to exist in the material world, and Forti insists on being clear about this. Form is neither an essence nor an idea, rather it's the product of the conditions in which it is created. This is one of the reasons why many modernist architects in the 1920s emphasized function. Therefore, the answer to the question of what form is should be sought in the conditions surrounding it. This means that form must always be considered in relation to function. Forti also argues that architecture isn't just about visual and aesthetic concerns, but must also integrate with society, function, and the environment. He criticized formalism for being disconnected from context, ignoring functional concerns, and adopting a consumer-driven approach where architectural aesthetics are shaped by consumer demand. Instead, he believes that form should be to reinforce meaning.
As an example, in the 1960s, the American urban planner Kevin Lynch aimed to make the image of the city more distinct to enhance the livability of American cities. He argued that the concept of form should not be spread from social purpose. For instance, for the Hammond architects, the goal in the early 1920s was, as Adolf Behre put it, to achieve absolute dominance of form. This is a rejection of viewing architecture is tied to a social purpose. In his book, Modern Functional Building, Adolf Behre introduced a new idea by stating that form is a highly social matter. Behre argued that instead of each building from emerging solely based on its individual purpose, all buildings should be considered as part of a collective whole. He claimed that otherwise it would lead to anarchy.
The main part of design is form. Most things in the world have a shape because the environment is not the same everywhere. If the world was completely the same, there would be no different shapes of forces. Derry Thompson said that irregular shapes show different forces. A designer needs to understand the physical side of form, look at all design ideas and create a new model. The solution to a form problem is also a central problem. A good fit means forms and context work well together. We can see this in many things around us. For example, a community is like a chess game. Some moves are better than others at different times. A good musical composition is also a whole. Musical phrases must match their context. We can give Mozart's music as an example. In cities, planning communities, cities and their cultures are examples of wholeness. Context means people's background and the physical environment. This is why different fashion styles and artworks are often similar to each other. A form is correct when it fits well with a community of the same type. For example, let's talk about a water user. There is no clear border between the user and the rest of the community, but this border can change easily. If I say I want to use river water, I can change the whole system. The ability to change form and context together is the important skill for designer. When we talk about form, we have control over it. We shape thin word, but also let it change. Context is the part of the word that asks for a form. Good fit is when form and context match well.
Let's talk about the harmony between form and context. For example, in engineering, there is a process to make metal impurity-free. A group of metals is very simple because it has only one form context limit. This limit is a standard convection and we try to soften it between 100 forms. Let's think of a more complex example. Imagine we create an arrangement of iron shavings that stays stable in a magnetic field. Iron shavings form a shape if there is a magnetic field. By observing whether a shaving moves in magnetic field, we can evaluate the suitability of the form. If it does not move, the form is good and stable. But in the real world, finding the connection and forms we encounter is not that easy. There is no universal theory to explain this. This means form depends on trial and error in the world. Trial and error is a respectable design method, but it is very expensive and slow. So what should we do? Context and form recognize each other. This is what D.R.C. Thompson means. For example, a piece of furniture or a magnetic files for lines, once they are defined, there is no problem in following them. The difficulty is only technical. In real-world examples, design problems happen because we don't fully understand the phase in an area. We try to create diagrams without knowing them. A well-fitting from influence on an area, and what remains uncertain is the problem. The difference between good and bad harmony is also seen in social behavior. For example, if a man wears a suit on the beach or walks barefoot in fancy hotel, people may find it strange. This is because it does not fit the time and place. This is why the idea of good harmony is based on clear examples in daily life. What gets our attention most are things that don't match. For example, an old-fashioned broom, a kitchen counter that is hard to clean, or a shower that suddenly sprays hot water. These are mismatched between space, habits, and lifestyles.
Negative features are more concentrated because they can be expressed. The same thing is true for perception. For example, let's say we are given a button from a box full of buttons to evaluate. Firstly, we examine the buttons and notice some differences: bigger, darker, more holes, etc. It is easier to explain why a button is wrong, but compatibility can be described as the absence of certain negative features. Rather than the presence of positive ones, it is better to say that compatibility is practical. A series of essential requirements can be defined for compatibility theoretically. A form can be expected to meet all requirements, but this list can be endless and practical. Area definition is needed. For example, a button in the real world designed a compatible button don't mean including all possible features. It is important to focus only on the important and functional ones. This also requires eliminating some possibilities. For example, whether the button carries electricity or not should be considered in practice. When we talk about transportation problems, the fact that connections don't have a clear area definition creates an endless set of possibilities. Selection as subsets from these isn't an objective method. By nature, connections can't be fully defined. Since we can't completely define the button, the connection, we should think that the compatibility is necessary. If we examine the community as a set and its connection, the harmony or disharmony between them determines the order of the society. We can express this harmony as a double variable. If it happens, it gets a value of 1. If it doesn't happen, it gets a value of 0. If all variables are 0, it means harmony in society. Social order is possible only through or form.
Organic and geometric forms can influence user experience in different ways, affecting people's spatial perceptions and psychological comfort. Organic forms contain irregular and unordered patterns found in nature. These forms are generally fluid and soft-edged, resembling natural elements like waves and slopes. Geometric forms, on the other hand, are more defined and structured. They have clear order and mathematical precision. The sense of clarity and precision they provide can sometimes create a cold and distant perception. As perceptual experience, organic forms encourage movement and exploration. For example, a structure with a curvilinear design can offer the user different perspectives as they move forward. Geometric forms with their linear orientation and clear visual hierarchy support logical thinking. For instance, in a building, the presence of straight corridors and angles can help users easily comprehend the space.
Organic forms are generally associated with warmth and inclusivity, while geometric forms emphasize discipline and modernity. From Adrian Forty's perspective, the differences between organic and geometric forms are not only visual or functional, but are also shaped by historical, political, and ideological context. User experiences is not just determined by individual psychological responses, but also by how society is influenced by historical and ideological structures.
According to Christopher Alexander, can natural order be imitated when geometric forms are designed? It can be said that certain forms are more organic. If an organic form is combined with a geometric form in a successful way, the result will be a structure that is both visually and physically more pleasing. A truly successful design helps people adapt to nature, supporting the natural balance of human beings. A design that integrates elements in a balanced way is considered successful both on a personal level and in terms of interaction. For organic forms, it can be stated that their primary requirements is both emotional and geometric integration. If an example is to be given for organic forms, it will be falling water house, Conch House Grass, Lotus Temple / Eden Project, Cornwall, Park Ghoul, and for geometric forms, we could say Cubic Houses, CCTU Center, Museo Samuel, Haydar Aliyev Center, for examples. In summary, today we examined the works of Adrian Forty and Alexander, discussing topics such as architectural forms and the concept of harmony and their impact on the design process. Thank you for listening to us.